The old veteran, Mr. Charles Wilson, had been coming to the diner for years. It wasn't fancy, just a roadside spot with sticky booths and the smell of fresh coffee hanging in the air. He liked it because it reminded him of simpler times. But recently, there had been a change in ownership. The new owner, a wiry man named Don, had made it clear that folks like Mr. Wilson weren't welcome anymore. That morning, when Mr. Wilson stepped through the door, the usual warmth of the diner felt cold. Don stood behind the counter, glaring at him. "We don't serve your kind here," Don snapped, loud enough for everyone to hear. The room fell silent, and Mr. Wilson's hand trembled on his cane. He didn't argue. He just turned to leave, his pride battered. Outside, a low rumble of engines echoed. A group of bikers, clad in leather and denim, had pulled into the parking lot. The bikers, a mix of men and women with weathered faces. The bikers stood still for a moment, their presence heavy in the crisp morning air. Don watched from the window, his smirk fading as the group began to move toward the diner door. The leader nodded to Mr. Wilson, his voice steady but low. "Why don't you come back inside with us, sir?" Mr. Wilson shook his head, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want trouble. I just wanted breakfast." The leader's expression hardened. Sometimes trouble has to be faced. He turned back to his crew, giving them a subtle signal. They pushed the door open, the little bell jingling sharply. The room inside went deathly quiet as the group filled the space, their boots heavy on the tiled floor. Don stepped out from behind the counter, his bravado faltering slightly as he realized he was outnumbered. "We don't need a scene here," he said, trying to sound firm. "Seems like there's already a scene," the leader replied calmly, scanning the room. His eyes landed on the waitress, who froze mid-step. "Miss, you all right?" The waitress looked down, avoiding Don's glare, but her trembling hands gave her away. One of the bikers caught her eye, offering a small, reassuring nod. Slowly, she spoke, her voice shaky. He's been running people off. Folks like Mr. Wilson." The tension in the room was thick now, almost unbearable. Don's face reddened, his hands clenched into fists. "This is my diner," he spat. "I'll run it how I see fit." The leader stepped closer, his calm demeanor unshaken. "This isn't about your diner. It's about respect. That man out there fought for this country, same as any of us might have. You don't treat someone like that, not here, not anywhere." The bikers spread out slightly, their quiet unity speaking louder than words. The regulars at the booths watched with wide eyes, unsure what would happen next. Outside, Mr. Wilson stood by his truck, his heart heavy, listening to the muffled voices and waiting for something to change. At sight of Mr. Wilson shuffling toward his old pickup truck, something about the scene made him pause. He glanced toward the diner, where Don was still standing by the window, smirking. "Everything all right, sir?" the leader called out. Mr. Wilson hesitated, his pride urging him to stay quiet, but his tired eyes betrayed the pain he felt. "Just a misunderstanding," he said softly, gripping the door of his truck. The leader exchanged a look with his crew, sensing there was more to the story. Meanwhile, inside the diner, the regulars whispered among themselves. Some looked uncomfortable, but none had spoken up earlier. A waitress near the counter fidgeted, her face pale as she watched the bikers linger. Outside, the tension thickened. One of the younger bikers muttered, "Didn't expect this kind of thing still happening." The leader nodded grimly. "We don't turn our backs on injustice." Mr. Wilson glanced at them, unsure whether to be thankful or wary. He faced enough battles in his life to know when one was brewing. As the confrontation grew tense inside the diner, a sharp sound broke the silence. A loud, unexpected honk from the parking lot. Everyone turned to see another vehicle pulling in, its tires crunching against the gravel. It was a sleek black SUV, its windows tinted so dark they reflected the morning light like mirrors. The sidewalk, drenched from head to toe. Her small frame shivered as the rain poured relentlessly. But what struck him most was the look in her eyes. An overwhelming sadness no child should ever bear. Pulling over, he gently approached her, kneeling to meet her gaze. "Are you okay, sweetheart? Where's your mommy?" he asked softly. She hesitated, clutching a worn-out teddy bear, before whispering words that broke his heart. "Mommy doesn't want me anymore." Who was this little girl, and how did she end up alone in such a storm? Officer Daniels knew he couldn't walk away. As he reached out to help her, he had no idea this moment would lead to uncovering a story far deeper than he ever. Officer Daniels carefully wrapped his jacket around the shivering little girl and guided her to his patrol car. Her name was Lily, and she barely spoke as he tried to comfort her. Every question he asked, "Where do you live? Can I call someone for you?" was met with silence or a faint shake of her head. It was clear she was terrified, and Daniels could feel the weight of whatever she was carrying. As they drove to the station, Lily finally muttered something. "Mommy said I'm too much trouble." Daniel's heart sank. He couldn't imagine what could drive a parent to abandon their child. Determined to help, he contacted Child Protective Services, but even they had no immediate records of Lily or her family. Meanwhile, back at the station, an officer reviewing nearby surveillance footage made a chilling discovery. A shadowy figure lingered near the area where Lily had been found, but they vanished moments before Daniels arrived. Was someone watching her? Or worse, following her? The deeper Daniels looked into Lily's situation, the more troubling questions arose. Why was there no missing child report? Who was the mysterious figure? And what kind of life had Lily been living before she ended up on that rainy street? The pieces didn't add up, and Daniels felt an urgency to uncover the truth before it was too late imagined. As the hours stretched on, Officer Daniels couldn't shake the feeling that Lily's story was more than a simple case of abandonment. She sat quietly in the corner of the station, holding tightly to her teddy bear, her eyes darting nervously every time the door opened. It was clear she didn't feel safe, even here. Daniels decided to revisit the area where he had found her. The rain had stopped, but the streets still glistened under the dim glow of streetlights. With a flashlight in hand, he searched for anything: clues, belongings, signs of a struggle. That's when he found it. A small crumpled piece of paper tucked into a storm drain. It was a note written hastily in smudged ink. The words sent a chill down his spine. "She's your problem now." Back at the station, Daniels shared the note with his team. They began piecing together what little information they had, but nothing prepared him for what happened next. A call came in from a woman claiming to be Lily's mother. Her voice was shaky, almost desperate, but her words didn't add up. She refused to give her location, and when Daniels asked why Lily had been left in the rain, the line went dead. Mr. Wilson frowned, a new layer of mystery unfolding. "What do you mean?" Marcus hesitated, then smiled slightly. "Let's just say your story is bigger than you realize. But that's a conversation for another day." As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm glow over the diner's parking lot, Mr. Wilson leaned against his truck, watching the bikers ride off one by one. Their roars echoed in the distance, but their message lingered, a reminder that unity could stand against prejudice. The waitress came out with a small to-go bag, her hands still trembling slightly. "It's on the house," she said softly, offering a smile. Mr. Wilson took the bag, nodding his thanks. "You were brave in there," he said. "Don't lose that." Marcus lingered a moment longer, his phone in hand, watching the veteran carefully. We'll be in touch, Mr. Wilson. There's more to do, and you'll be hearing from us soon. Mr. Wilson nodded, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time, hope. As he climbed into his truck and drove away, the reflection of the diner faded in his rearview mirror. It wasn't just a meal he'd found that day, but a renewed sense of purpose, a belief that even in the face of injustice, the right voices could rise, loud and unwavering.